Hi there, and welcome to another in my series for cinematographers. Well, I've been shooting films for over 30 years professionally, broadcast documentaries and dramas, but this is where I like to informally just talk about the craft that I've learnt. And wherever I can, I use examples that I've shot myself, just because those are the ones that I know most about, where the lights are, which lenses we've used, and what's motivated the camera to move or not to move. Plus there's all sorts of other little tips and tricks that I'll throw in, which don't make it to the textbooks, but they always seem to affect the way a scene is shot on the day. So there'll be something for you wherever you are on your journey into the camera department, be it a trainee, an assistant, an operator, or even a DOP in your own right. Hi there and welcome back, and we're going to look at the Sun app that I use and just give you a bit more information about how I go about using those apps myself when I'm recceing and when I'm shooting. So this is the Sun Position app that I use. It's the free demo version. You can pay a few quid and get some add-ons if you want to. Probably well worth it, but this is just the free one. And I'm just going to run through how I go about using this when I go on a recce. And I highly recommend you take this or something like it whenever you go on a recce. As the DOP, it really is your responsibility to know where the sun is going to be and when it is going to be there. So here's the location it's the well, and I found a perspective which I really like for kind of obvious reasons. There's a great view in the background. If I turn the camera around the other way, it's not so beautiful, take my word for it, but that is a fantastic view. So that's my kind of key angle, but I need some more information. From this photograph, I don't know what time of day it was taken, what time in the morning or afternoon or the evening it was. But with my viewfinder app and my Sun information app, I can get a lot more information to everybody and retain a lot more information myself. So what I do then is first of all I boot up my viewfinder app, which we've just spoken about, and it's a reference here. I want this tree because this gives me such a nice frame here, doesn't it? And here, for instance, this bush happens to be there. I could always get the art department to bring one in if I wanted it from a different position, or I could get them to take it out if I didn't want it there. Nevertheless, that's my key position, 24mm. And I know that the scene in this instant has a couple of people coming to the well, I think, and a camel arriving. And so I know that and there's a slightly kind of romantic tinge to the scene, a slightly romantic tone to the scene. So I probably want my two figures at the well facing the camera. You can tell from this photo where the sun is. We just need to know when it's going to be there. So work out where the shadows are and tell me where in the sky the sun is at the moment. It's in a good spot actually, isn't it? Because it's revealing three-dimensionally this landscape. It's putting those shadows into those cliffs there into deep shadow. That's kind of glancing light where it reveals the texture, and then this is framed in darkness as well. It's a nice composition, and here at the well it's kind of rear three-quarter light, so it's kind of being lit. The sun's somewhere up here. But actually what I want is when they're sitting at the well, I want to know if I can get them completely backlit. So if I want the sun there in the sky, is it ever going to be there on the day that we're coming back to shoot? And this recce was like 2 months before the shoot. So in my Sun app, I'll boot it up and I will put in, we were there in November, so I'd put December, January, I'd put end of January, a date, arbitrary date, let's say January the 20th. And I'll work out where the sun is going to be on that day. Let's have a look. So on that sun app, it's going to tell me that the sun is in fact going to be in the sky coming up at 8 o'clock in the morning. You can see there it just says 8 o'clock in the morning. I haven't changed the date, you can see, but I could have done. I could put 2nd of January, so probably sun is going to be, I don't know, a little bit later, isn't it? So it's probably going to be coming up there or something. But you can change that in the app. But that tells me at 8 o'clock, I'm going to get the sun thumping the back of their heads. Big, dramatic shot, sunlight. That's where it is at 4:30 in the morning. Obviously hasn't risen yet, sunrise. It comes up behind that hill. If it's a clear morning, it's going to be glorious. If it's a little bit cloudy, I'm going to get a fantastic sunrise. If it's completely cloudy, well, it's not going to be quite so beautiful, but that's the luck of the draw, isn't it? So what I can do now is I can say to the production manager, I need that shot ready to shoot at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I know that they like to get everybody on set at least 2 hours before we shoot. So that means a 6 o'clock call at that location so we can get all the camera stuff out. The actors can get dressed, makeup done, they can go through the lines, people can have breakfast, and then we can be set up with the cameras by at least 20 to 8. So I can say to the director, 20 to 8, the camera's ready to shoot, and I've got my angle lined up. And I know from my earlier shot that I'm going to be on, I can't quite remember the lens. What lens did we choose? 24mm. So I can say to the camera department, when I arrive, I can put a piece of paper on the ground or a board or what's called a sausage, and I can put a bit of camera tape on it, say camera position 1, 24mm, and the camera team knows exactly what to build. Tripod or track if I've specified track. 24mm lens. I want it there at 7:30 in the morning, ready to shoot for the sun coming up. I know exactly what I'm doing, when I've got to be there, where we've got to be. It's all there. Fantastic. So, what a great set of free tools you've got. You've got to work out where you've got to be in order to get the sunrise, and you don't know where, or the sunset, and you don't know where it's going to be. Now you've got an app which explains what time of day it's going to be there, where you've got to put the camera in order to get it. Here's a few other shots, just random ones. I've even got the track of the moon on that one in case I want it. A couple of vistas here. There's a tree here which I specifically needed to get a really strong backlight on. So I could tell exactly what time of day we had to be there. Here's a tricky one. This is a set, an interior. It's not an interior set. It's like a courtyard set, but very difficult to shoot. You can see these shadows across it, making filming really difficult. And this is in Morocco, so you can see the difference between the shade and the light area is just immense. There's probably about between 8 and 10 stops of difference. So, do I shoot at f16? Do I shoot at f16, t16 to get the exposure right here? Or do I shoot at 2.8 here? Or do I shoot at 5.6 in the middle and have everything a bit overexposed and everything a bit underexposed? Real problem. But that helps me make decisions. And so I could say to my gaffer, my lighting team, when we do that location, I have to have the whole courtyard covered in silk parachutes. And what that does is it really helps alleviate all my shadow problems. You can see the difference it's made to the hard light here and the shadow area. It's softened all the light and it's softened all the shadows. In fact, although it's diffusing and softening that hard light that's falling on that wall, it's also filling, like a bounce fill, all the shadows out and making it really smooth, even light. So my close-ups are going to look gorgeous. It just makes it much more easy to shoot. And because I had the app, I knew where the sun was going to be and I knew where to put the the silk parachutes. The only downside is that when the wind comes up, the parachutes take off. So how do I use those apps on the shoot? Do I still use them? Yes, I do. I'm using them on the recce, but I'm also using them when I go to a shoot. So, and it's pretty simple, really. It's about staying ahead, staying in control, and being on the ball, and knowing what you're doing, and giving people confidence that you know what you're doing. Because once you're into shoot mode, money is being spent at a vast rate. There's, I think, up to 80 people involved on the day on this particular shoot. That's a lot of money. Actors, crew, catering, art department, production, extras. There's a lot of people, a lot of money involved. And so every minute that you're there, you need to be filming if you can. And so you need to know where the next shot is going to be. So on all these shots, you can see the camera's rigged. I mean, here there's that zoom lens. That's a 24 to 250mm zoom. That takes the camera team about 20 minutes to get it off the camera, back in the box, reconfigured, and to put a prime lens back on. 20 minutes. And so if I say that I want a prime lens on, and then I get it into position, and actually it's the wrong lens, then it can take another 5 or 10 minutes or 20 minutes to put the other lens back on. There's not that time available to a shoot. You need to know exactly what lens you need next. Here, same thing here. Here they're laying a track here. Camera, this is early in the morning, the camera's still in the back of the truck. Where is your lens going to be? Where is your camera going to be? What lens are you going to put on it? I need to know exactly so I can tell my grip. Lassan, here he is. My favourite grip. He's amazing bloke. But if I can tell him exactly what lens I want before it's even out the van and on the camera, then he can build the whole track with his grip team ahead of the shoot happening. So I need the app to know exactly where I'm going to go. And I can move around and I can plot each shot as we're setting up. So for example, here, camera's set up. Whatever lens I'm on there, I don't know, let's say for the sake of argument, 35mm. I can leave the camera there, I can get my app out, I can walk around the set and I can think, right, what does it look like if I come this side with a 24mm for the next shot? I need to know what the next shot is. What shot is next? You always need to know what is happening next before everybody else does. So, oops, sorry, you need to show that one, that's me having a kip. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah. Next shot. What is the next shot? You've always got to know the next shot. Because as soon as we've finished one shot and everybody relaxes, within 10 seconds, I need to be saying, okay, the camera is here with this lens on. Or I point to the next bit of camera tape on the floor and I say, there's the next shot position, tall tripod, 50mm lens, put it there now. And then within 2 or 3 minutes, we're ready to shoot. And I can say to the director, right, ready to shoot. So you always need to have in your head the next shot that you have to do. Ideally, the next 2 or 3 shots. Here's somebody who knows what shot is next. To take a red herring, to divert for a moment. There is a similarity here. I don't know how many of you are sad enough to watch the snooker. I am. Yeah, it's one of the world's greatest snooker players. However, if you watch them playing snooker, they always know in advance at least 3 or 4 shots ahead. So if he's looking at potting that yellow ball and you ask him which shot is next, he will know, I'm going to pot the red at the far end of the table, then the black, then I'm going to pop the other end down the other end of the table, and then the pink, for example. So he knows, any snooker player knows 3 or 4 shots exactly where the white ball, that cue ball, is going to be placed. Pretend it's a camera if you like. He knows exactly, shot by shot, everything he needs to clear that table, to complete the sequence, to get all the shots. And as the DOP, the cinematographer, you need to know all the time, not just the next shot, but the one after that, the one after that, and the one after that. You need to have them in your mind all the time, and you need to be thinking 3 or 4 shots ahead. And in fact, it often involves thinking 1 or 2 sets ahead. So I may be having one set lit, and at the same time while they're doing that, I'll be looking at another set, telling them how to light that, and telling the grips where I want the track, and that's for the scene that I haven't even started shooting yet, but I need to get them building it because I'm going to be moving on there in 2 or 3 hours. So, just like these snooker players, you need to work out exactly what shots you need. And it's often down to you, I'd say it's always down to the cinematographer to know all the shots. It's not the director's responsibility, or it's not only the director's responsibility. She doesn't have to know all the shots, but you do as the cinematographer. You don't want your footage to get to the edit and for the editor to turn to your director and say, where is the close-up of the revolver? And the director to say, oh, I forgot it. Because the editor will say, well, what was your DOP doing? They must have known. So you need to know all the shots, the vocabulary of all the shots that are needed, so that you can offer them to your director on the day. You can say to them, don't forget we need the cutaway of the revolver, or don't forget we need that reverse of the person who came in through the door. And then the director can say, actually, it's okay, I don't need that cutaway, or I don't need that reverse. Or they may say, oh, I forgot. Yes, of course we need that reverse. How did I forget that? Thank you. They'll trust you, and they'll know that you are always going to deliver them the shots that they need for their film. So you've got to know your way around the scenes. You've got to know which lenses. You've got to know all the shots that are needed for the sequence. It's not down to the director. It is down to you as a cinematographer, the DOP, to know everything about that scene and how to collect it and get through the scene in time to get on to the next one.
And all the way around the houses again.
115.
This is as good as it gets. And look at this positional shot as well. Not only the pop, look at the cue ball's finished. Unbelievable break. And what a reception Ronnie O'Sullivan gets from this crucible.
So here's a location which is linked to that shot you saw previously, and I've chosen a wide lens here, obviously as wide as I can get without any curvature of the earth, so we're looking at a 24mm. And then I've taken, just to talk a little bit about the composition, I've made sure that I've taken time to dress my set with the available characters so that I can then work my way around in the other shots. But like I say, it's a 24mm lens. This is on the Red Dragon. Red camera's at 5K as it was back when I shot this. And further on the composition, although I don't use a rule of thirds calculator when I'm shooting, we can pop it on now and have a look and just see out of interest how it applies once you start framing things intuitively with that system. You can see how the composition is divided up but has some dynamics within it. So for example, this little group of 3 people on the left in the water sort of anchor a triangular frame which reaches up to the people on the opposite bank and up to the head of Jesus as he's standing in the water, and then his kind of triangle completes back towards those people in the water, and he'll turn into that central space once the shot starts developing. But it's just interesting to see the dynamics there of how the space is divided up. Foreground here is obviously given to the key character, and this actually starts with a little jib shot, but once we're into this shot and it's unfolding, I've then got some dialogue with these people in the distance who are shouting stuff at him, and then I've got other people here, and I've got these guys on the left of frame here. Place people in the water a little bit, so there's a touch of walking on the water referenced. But I've been able to go there and set that scene with that lens, mark the position. It's a tricky shot because it involves getting the camera over the water, so I need to know exactly that I've got the right lens on to do that. And then it plays out, and we get into the next shots. And I won't digress from that scene. Let's go scroll forward a little bit. We're going to go on a couple of scenes, and here's another shot. And in fact, if memory serves right, this shot actually started with a tilt and pan down from the rock face. So if you were to tilt up here in that left-hand direction, you'd see the top of the mountain, and then there was a slow ease down to this frame, and that is purely to give the scene a bit more drama, a bit more time for the editor to get in. And in fact, the editor hasn't used that move, he's just taken the end of the shot. Again, it's a wide lens. I want to see the drama of the landscape and then the drama of the scale of these small bunch of people coming over the horizon there. It's not a sort of false horizon, isn't it? But, and then if we play that just a little bit, and then as you're shooting this wide shot, you've already probably worked out what the next shot is, but it obviously lends itself to a specific frame here. And you can have already worked out with your app what lens you want the camera team to put on to give you the frame that you want. So if we just have a look at a few lenses here, we can see what our next shot is. We look like an 85 or a 135. And there we have it. It's actually the 135 just on the tripod, panning them into the next shot. And then we cut back to this wide shot, which is actually on a jib. You can just see it beginning to jib. So we're still on the 24mm here. And then what I do is I play the whole scene on the 24mm, or this whole section of the scene, to give the editor the chance to utilize that shot. And what happens in this shot, although the editor doesn't use it, is the jib just gradually pushes in, gains height, comes over the top of the stone in the foreground, which has symbolic significance because he's talking to this disciple called Peter, who's referred to as the rock. So I've chosen this location because it's got this, happened to have this great boulder sitting in this clear landscape, so it was a good visual cue for me. Yeah, so you can just see that if I just rock that to and fro, you can just see the jib beginning to take effect there. It's a really nice jib shot, but the editor hasn't used it. They've gone straight into the next logical shot. And so again, you need to think to yourself, what is the next logical shot? They're going to be in conversation here. It's pretty obvious, but you need to think it through, especially if you're shooting actuality documentary, because you don't have time to stop and start the scene. You just follow the rhythm of the live action, which is unrehearsed. So if you were shooting documentary mode, this wouldn't be a prime lens, it would probably be a zoom lens. maybe something between the equivalent of 24mm, which we're looking at now, and a 140mm, which is obviously a much tighter lens, and then you'd work that as you shot. So you could work out now where the next shot is. It's going to be capturing the conversation that they have between them. So he cuts round on the angle, and here we are on a two-shot 35mm lens, and that's now just dedicated to the action between these two characters. Obviously, you'd have the next shot in your mind as the DOP, particularly if this is documentary. Where do you reposition to? Which side of the character? You need to stay on the 180-degree line. So we've come to that reverse. And then you can see that little cut between them. This is actually a little bit tighter on that one. I've just stepped in a little bit just to give a little bit more presence to that character. But then obviously you can cut between those two shots or find another matching shot all day long on that lens. And here it's going into some action. 30. Now there, in the dialogue here, what's happened here? What's happened here? They're having this conversation, and it turns into a struggle. And at a certain point, the character of Jesus recognizes Peter as the devil, or he labels him as the devil. And at that point in time, it gets physical, and then we cut to a reverse. And what's happened there? He's crossed the line. So really, we should be on the other side, shouldn't we? Over his shoulder. By rights, if we're going to cut from this angle, we would cut over his right shoulder. This is his right shoulder, so the camera would be there. But what's happened is he's crossed the line, and so we're actually shooting over his left shoulder. That's a line cross, but it's teed up by the script. And in fact, when I shot it, you can see we're cut in halfway through the shot, but when I shot this, I made sure that I included crossing the line on camera. So, in other words, when I shot this, I made sure that I was shooting over this shoulder, and then as he gave his line, "You are the devil," in that action I crossed round behind and came over this shoulder. Now, it was the editor's choice, or the director's choice, to leave out that line crossing because they felt they didn't need it. But I always make sure that I capture it in camera because it's grammatically correct to do so. So if ever I can, I make sure that I give them that option of the line crossing. Anyway, let's just run this a little bit. You can see the struggle developing. This is still staying on the 35mm lens. More action involved. That cues him around, and then that same lens, it turns from the over-the-shoulder two-shot that it's been working at, and it evolves into this kind of wide shot without changing the lens, but it's all in the handheld camera action. So the 35mm again, but doing a different job, and he disappears up the hill, and then we are left to pick up the pieces, some reaction shots, and then 35mm lens again gives us a good close-up on the main character, and then beyond him, down at the bottom of the hill, are the rest of the gang. Soft. So I've chosen a depth of field where you can clearly see who they are and that they are figures, but the depth of field means that they're out of focus, so the audience is concentrating on the key figure in the foreground. So we've then come back to the 24mm on that jib. So while I have that jib shot lined up, I got the whole action caught on that jib. I didn't obviously keep resetting the jib, I just ran the whole action through it. They don't use a lot of it, but you can just see that it gives you that beautiful little move, that jib shot. It's just a subtle move, but it just brings the landscape to life just for a moment, resets everything in that epic scale, and that just because everything's moving in 3 dimensions. You know, I could have put it on a tripod and panned him down a bit or zoomed in, but that everything is moving in relation to itself, which is why a jib or a tracking shot is so attractive. But anyway, that's given you a sort of insight into getting your head around the lenses and always being there, knowing what the next shot is.
Okay, so what I want you to do is to use those apps now every day as you go around and start internalizing the process. As you go through your life, you'll know, if you watch any film, it's all about a lot of mundane scenes. People getting in a bus, getting in a car, going to a restaurant, having a cup of tea in their living room, whatever it is. It's ordinary scenes, and these are the things that you're doing day by day, whatever it is. Getting the bus to go to university or going down the seafront. Next time you do it, get your app out, work out. Where's the sun going to be for this bus journey? Do I want to shoot it in the morning? Do I want to shoot it in the evening? Which lens am I going to be on? I'm on the back seat of the bus. Do I want to be on a 24mm? Do I want to be on a 50mm? Should I be at the other end of the bus, looking back? Depends on the time of day. Is it travelling east to west? Am I sitting in a sitting room? Is the sun coming in through the window? It's too cloudy, I don't know where the sun is. Get your app out. Is it south facing? If it's the south facing window, the sun is going to come in through the window if it's a clear day. If it's a north facing window, the sun's not going to come in through the window, ever. You need to know. You might want to specify specifically a room where the sun pours in through the window. Or you might want to specifically specify a north-facing window so the sun never pours in through the window, and you can put your own sun with a big light looking in through the window that's always going to be there all day, so you can shoot that scene all day if you like with the sun pouring through the window. You've got to know where the sun's going to be. And these apps, perfect for it. And the more you do it, pretend to shoot it if you like, the more you'll internalize the whole process. I think there's a great argument for kind of shooting scenes in your imagination, ones that are never going to be shot. You just go through the process as a DP. One thing I used to do when I was at film school, I couldn't afford, we didn't have videotape then, or digital or anything, I'm that old. I couldn't afford to run the film through the cameras. So I used to go out with a camera, a stills camera often, with no film in it. I couldn't afford to get it processed. And I would take shots carefully. I'd compose them, click the shutter, and it would force me into the process of really thinking about my frames, thinking about the light, thinking about my compositions, clicking the shutter. I didn't end up with any footage, but the process, the more I did it, the quicker I became at it, the more fluid you become. I would recommend you do that, and these apps are a great way of doing it. You know, you can take the images on the screen as well. You can build a whole sequence on your app with all the angles and work it out in advance. Fantastic storyboarding tool. It's a DOP. That's incredible. I've even recorded on the Cadrage video with the approximate lens on for a screen test when we've screen tested actors. And then I've sent them to the producer and director at the end of the day via their Dropbox or via email through the app. Fantastic system. So please, everyone, I want you to download a free version, if you like, of a Director's Finder app, which has got all the lenses in it, and you can work your way through the 14mm, the 24mm, the 50, the 85, the 135, and you can get to know your lenses and use your sun app to work out exactly where the sun's going to be and when it's going to be there. Do you want to shoot backlit, side lit, frontally lit, possibly? You can get the best images and you can be there at the best time of day, and your personal cinematography is going to be outstanding, better than anybody else's. You give yourself the best chance of that by practicing and internalizing, and these apps, great way of doing it. And then you'll start coming up with, like we saw in Ways of Seeing Part 1, beautiful compositions, beautiful lighting. It's going to come quicker and more naturally to you. Whether you're an old master or a new master, or mistress of light, here we go back to Apocalypse Now. It's great ways of doing it.